He is one of today's premier musicians. His solo albums have earned him 2 Grammy nominations, and he's here to speak with us about the industry, his career, and all that jazz. Russell Gunn on When We Speak. When we speak.
Death and life are in the power of the tongue.
When we speak. Now, I know that sometimes there are a lot of musicians have different instruments for practice, and then the ones they do for shows and stuff like that. Do you own more than one instrument?
I own quite a few. Quite a few. Over the years, I've collected a few. But as a trumpet player, you would really want to just play on one. I mean, you have others just in case something happens. So you get dented or your main instrument gets out of commission. But you definitely want to practice and play on the instrument that you play.
Okay, because the sound is a little different than, let's say, playing a guitar or stuff, isn't it?
Well, sound is.
Well, when it comes to, I guess I didn't qualify what I was saying. With why you want to play that same trumpet is so that you get familiar with that particular trumpet, and as well as how it's, I remember a little bit like when you would pull your little vowels for flat and sharp and stuff like that. Is that the reason why you say that?
Well, no. First, I think sound, as a jazz musician, 90% of the sound is in your head, and you could reproduce that sound pretty much on any instrument or that you play. So I could pick up, anybody's trumpet, and for the most part, be able to produce the sound that I produce on my instrument, because that sound is in your head. Of course, there are physical things to the instrument that will alter the sound slightly, but the majority of the sound that's produced by a musician it's in his head. Like a piano player, even his touch, his tone on the piano, it's going to be pretty much the same on any piano he plays, even though, one piano may have better action, better in tune, whatever. Whatever the dynamics of the physical instrument are, that will alter it, but by and large, everybody's sound is in their head.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. I've never heard anyone say that, actually.
Yeah.
So that was...
if you just historically, if you listen to any recordings of like Charlie Parker, and then Charlie Parker was notorious for pawning his alto saxophone and borrowing horns to play on record dates and gigs, but it was always Bird. You always knew it was him. His sound, that was his sound. Train was the same way. Their sound is their sound, and no matter what instrument they pick up, you could tell that it's them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you think that being a drummer was your real passion. The drums are your real passion. But you've been playing trumpet, like you said, since you were 10.
Yeah.
So when did you finally say, I was going to say, when did you realize that trumpet was your passion, but now we know trumpet isn't your passion. But when did you finally say, you know what, I actually do like this trumpet, though. I like playing this trumpet.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a lot about playing the trumpet. Initially, the only reason I started playing the trumpet initially anyway was because a friend of mine, when we were in the 4th grade, back in the day when music was in schools for free, in elementary schools, my best friend, we decided that we wanted to start taking band, and and they gave us options then, and I think my first option was to play the saxophone, because all of the the solos that you heard on the records, the R&B songs, they were always saxophone. So I was like, well, I want to play that. But my friend was like, hey man, I want to play trumpet. Why don't you play trumpet with me? And I was like, I don't care.
You know what? It's so funny that you're saying this, because that's how I started playing the trumpet, which I didn't play it for that long, and I wasn't all that great. But that's how I started. A friend of mine wanted to join the band, and I wanted to join the band, and we both wanted to play sax. Well, since I'm even more familiar with singing, are there any singers that you mimic when you're playing?
That's a really good question, but I think one of the things that we do is that we try, especially if we're playing like show tunes, which is what a lot of the bebop language and the hard bop language is set upon. Those the movements of those chord progressions are basically based on Broadway show tunes. So one of the things that's really important for a musician to try to learn is the words. And once you really understand the words and what the words meant, then it's easy. You have a better interpretation of how to play these lines and try to, interpret instrumentally what they were doing vocally. So if you just learn melodies without actually learning the words, then you're really only doing half the job. But once you learn the words to say a song like "You Don't Know What Love Is," which is a standard. Most musicians play. Most musicians don't know the words. But once when you understand the words to that song, then you start interpreting it a different way.
So it is very important that you also know the song, the lyrics.
Yeah.
Let's say to the song.
If there are lyrics, then it's really important that you at least be familiar. You don't have to be able to sing the song, but you have a good understanding of the lyrics. You know what I mean? Living in New York, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being around, especially all of the young musicians that moved to New York around the same time I did. I enjoyed the fellowship. I enjoyed the learning from each other. I love being around the older musicians, the energy, getting up, sleeping all day to 3 p.m., wake up, practice, go to the jam session, come back home at 8 in the morning, do it all over again. Mm-hmm. Everything about that I loved, but I always knew that wasn't for me long term. Because I saw maybe a generation or two generations ahead of me of musicians that was living in New York with their roommates. Everybody still broke. Yeah. I knew that I could see that you had to have some kind of a plan or some kind of escape hatch or to deal with New York. So I always planned on, once I felt like I was established enough within the music community, that if I felt comfortable enough with leaving New York, I would. Mm-hmm. And so after I was signed to Muse Records almost as soon as I got to New York, and I made a bunch of records for them, maybe 3 or 4, and then finally my big opportunity came when I signed with Atlantic Records, and after that I was like, all right, I'm out. Because I had already played with most of the people. Everybody knew me. So I decided that this was it. This was my time to leave. And of course, I didn't know, what I knew now. I didn't really understand it. Just because you sign with a big record label don't mean it's gonna go down like that. Everything's gonna happen. Right. So actually, I moved to moved here to Atlanta in '98, and the end of '98. And man, before my record even came out, it was tell you that same cycle. I was signed to Atlantic. They ended the Atlantic Jazz label. That went under. So everything was under the umbrella of Atlantic Records. So everything fell under the same scrutiny, which was unfortunate for me because I was signed at the same time Lil' Kim was signed. Remember her first record, Hardcore, which sold like 18 billion copies. And there was a few other people that were signed at the same time, and my fate fell in the accountants' hands. Mm-hmm. They got Russell Gunn, 5,000 copies. They got Lil' Kim, 2 million copies. All of this stuff down here, goodbye. Yeah. So before my record even came out, I was dropped. They called me, and they dropped me. And now here I am. I left New York. I'm here in Atlanta.
You wanted to go back now, huh?
I didn't really want to go back. I just didn't understand. I just didn't understand how the business could work like this. I didn't understand that for somebody to be pursued, because I was pursued. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I was like knocking on people's doors saying, "Please listen to my demo." Yeah. I mean, there were a bunch of people that wanted to sign me because I had a conception. But, you know, soon as I didn't sell 100,000 copies, I was gone. And it was quite traumatic, actually, because I was still relatively young. I was maybe 25, and it was hard for me. So here I am with no support in Atlanta. I didn't have any record company support. Nobody wanted to book me anymore because I don't have a record deal. And I get a call to go to Italy to play at this jazz festival, and it was over Christmas. And while I'm there, just checking messages, because you know nobody really was dealing with email or cell phone.
You almost said email, didn't you? And then you thought about it.
Just call home, check my messages, and a good friend of mine said, "Hey man, I heard that you were nominated for a Grammy." And I was like, "Man, please, ain't no way, ain't no way." But turns out, my first record for Atlantic, I was nominated for a Grammy after I had been dropped. I had been dropped. And on top of that, when I got back, the president of Atlantic called me and told me how happy he was for me to be signed to Atlantic Records. He had no idea that they even dropped me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When I think of a trumpet, sometimes I also think of a bugle or any type of horns and stuff like that. And most of the time, those are always known for announcing something. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe the king is coming or a call to war or something like that. And when that happens, they're not just announcing that the king is coming. That's one thing they're doing. They're a call mm-hmm. to let you know, hey, something's going on. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is they're looking for a response mm-hmm. from the people who hear it. Mm-hmm. So what I want to know from you, since you are a trumpet player, what are you announcing when you play, and then what are you expecting as a response from the audience?
I think just like back to earlier what we were saying. I think we just trying to play the history of the music mm-hmm. and try to deal with the information that's been given to us. All of us musicians should be so good. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be so good because there's so much information that has been. You know, we have 100 years of history to draw upon. We should all be so good. As a musician on stage, you know, you really are hoping that you get like a pop music response, the give and take of the crowd, the energy, because that's a real thing when the audience is responding to what you're doing. But it all depends on you. It's like how good do you sound? If you're not killing, then they shouldn't. Yeah, they don't give you no energy back. I played with a bunch of pop artists that we've been on stage and the crowd is like, anyway, next. And you know, so I mean, I don't really expect too much. I'm an artist for an artist's sake that just happens to have done a lot of pop things, and so that life, I appreciate it. It pays for a lot of the things that I enjoy. But the bottom line is I'm a musician, artist, and all I really want to do is get better and keep growing. And I want anybody that's coming up to want to get better and understand the history of black music. You have to understand not just the history of the people that played your instrument, the people that played other instruments, what they went through. Because it's 2013 now, and we forget that 40, 50 years ago, the social circumstances were a lot different for the people that we are influenced by. Right. So exactly. Can you imagine, I always say, can you imagine the stuff that Louis Armstrong had to deal with, being the greatest musician that ever walked the earth? Right. He, hands down, the greatest musician of all time. He influenced, one person influences all. Everything. He's like the Shaolin temple of music. Everything comes out of him. Everything. But can you imagine being him? You know what I'm saying? Right. Can you imagine being who he was and have to deal with walking outside of his door every day and dealing with how people treated him?
Hey everybody, this is Jermaine Sain. I just want to remind you that at the bottom of your screen, you can hit the like button, or if there's a thumbs up, you can hit the thumbs up. So always remember that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and continue to support indie music.